Greetings, initiates. Jedediah Thomas, the Mind Master here. Today, I wanted to talk about a few updates on some insights I got about multiple personalities, kind of why they come about, what they are, and kind of, the structure of them as well. Be sure to like and subscribe on the channel. Stay tuned for more content about the mind, the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, traumas, limiting beliefs, motivation, and basically now the spiritual world as well. So previously, I've mentioned in a couple different videos that I've basically worked with multiple personalities, and I was able to resolve that. And at the time, I had really only one instance of that. I was able to fix it, but it's not really easy for me to kind of understand the patterns behind things, the why behind things with only one data point. And I've recently been able to actually fix another multiple personality. So now I have at least some comparisons between the two, so I can actually start to fill out the theory behind it just a little bit more. So when I had first fixed a multiple personality, I knew it was somehow related to trauma because the person that I worked on grew up in an extremely abusive, extremely traumatic childhood, physical abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, basically any type of abuse that you can imagine, and on a whole lot of worse stuff as well. And basically, I had also done a lot of trauma work on them as well, like a lot of trauma work. And what I had thought originally is that basically there's, you could say, maybe like a container or a bucket of how much trauma we can take, right? So it's like as you get traumatized, that bucket fills up more and more and more and more. And depending on, the number of traumas or the severity of the trauma, that bucket can become basically full and overflow. And so there's basically a tipping point where instead of being traumatized, you actually develop a new personality. That was kind of like my thinking of how that breaks down. And with this newest one that I fixed, I'm thinking that that may not actually be accurate. I don't think there actually is a tipping point where you'll start creating personalities instead of traumas. What I think now is it's the same mechanism that causes trauma, but it manifests in a different way. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. So, what trauma is basically an evolutionary response to something that threatens our survival, right? Could be something somebody did, something somebody said, a feeling, a sound, whatever, you name it. Pretty much anything can cause a trauma if it shocks your subconscious. But what it also does is it triggers the fight or flight response, right? And so basically, what a trauma is when this fight or flight response is not allowed to play out and it gets interrupted somehow, and then that actually creates that traumatic imprint, right? So it's basically like, let's say you're in a car accident, boom, you get, crash. Now your trauma response is active and it's recording everything about that incident. And then maybe, a firefighter comes and shakes you out of your kind of what looks like an unconscious state or a shock state was actually your trauma response. And now you have a trauma, right? So that process was not allowed to play out. And now you're traumatized and it's got to be fixed. So that's like a trauma response. But why that happens is basically your fight or flight registering all of the things that need to happen. So in an ideal world, that, let's say you weren't shaken by the firefighter or whatever, and your fight or flight is allowed to actually play out that whole scenario and realize that you're safe and there's nothing dangerous that's going to happen, it will release that imprint, right? You won't actually be traumatized by it if it's allowed to play out. So what I now think that multiple personalities is basically when it's almost like the opposite of trauma in a certain way. Like, so trauma is the fight or flight, it gets interrupted mid process. And what I think multiple personalities is when the fight or flight gets activated for so long of a period of time that your mind can no longer actually create trauma, right? You're not actually able to get out of the traumatic situation, so it can't resolve. But at the same time, it's stuck in this like fight or flight for an extended period of time. And I believe that's what actually manifests into another personality. And the reason why I say that is because the first personality that I removed was a very aggressive, in your face personality. It kind of had a carefree attitude, but at the same time, it was like, screw you, F the world, F this person, F that person. It was very kind of abrasive, very, very choleric type personality, right? Which was very different than, the actual main personality of the client that I was working on, right? And that was actually fairly easy to get rid of because it was so confrontational. I was able to reason with it. I was able to establish the case for why it no longer needed to exist, and we were able to release it and let it go fairly quickly. Now, the second personality, actually from the same client, so it actually, in some ways, it's a better comparison, and in some way, it's a worse, because you don't have multiple people with the data points. It's always better to have data points of a larger sample size, but it does allow me to actually compare two personalities in one specific person, so there is some insights to be gained there. And this other personality that I removed was a fearful personality. It ran away. It would not talk to me. It, like, every time I tried to talk to it, it would run and hide. It was a very long process to actually get it to the point where it would feel safe enough to talk with me. And basically, when I was trying to reason with it, it kept shutting down, right? Like, it would listen, and then it's like, oh, no, 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 that's impossible. And it shut down. It's like, so it did take a little bit longer for me to build the case for why it's no longer needed, right? We got there, we resolved it, but it was difficult to kind of pin down, if that makes sense. It just wanted to run and hide. And so the reason why I'm kind of putting all this together is because those personalities are almost like an archetype of the fight or flight response, right? It's almost like the fight or flight response in each case became its own personality, its own way of operating in the world. And so what I'm thinking, of course, I'll need more data points to actually prove this for and show it for real, is that I believe that there are, assuming fight or flight, you could say fight, flight, or freeze, right? So let's say there's three possible, outcomes here, right? Fight, run away, or just shut down completely. So that's another possible path. But with these two data points, it does fit very nicely into the idea that whatever personality is created is either going to be a very aggressive fight personality. It's going to either be a very timid runaway type personality or scared personality, or it's going to be a complete shutdown personality, right? Just can't process anything and just like shuts off. And if that's the case, then what that means is that there are standards for what multiple personalities get created, which is actually, as far as I know, revolutionary in the understanding of multiple personalities, because you're no longer worried about what that actual specific personality is that you're actually going to be working with that personality as though it's a fight personality, or as though it's a runaway personality, or as though it's a shutdown personality, which simplifies working with them in a very big way, because no longer do you have to know all of these different personalities. What you need to know is that they fall into one of these three buckets. And then as long as you can work with one of these buckets, you can work with any manifestation of the personalities of that bucket, right? So if it's a fight personality, it doesn't matter whether it's verbally aggressive fight personality. It doesn't matter whether it's physically aggressive fight personality. It doesn't matter whether it, is brazen and all of this stuff, it's still a fight personality. And same thing with, you know, flight personalities, same thing with freeze personalities. So what it means is that, or you know, as I prove this, if this is true, what it means is you can literally systematize how to deal with a multiple personality archetype, right? Which would make multiple personalities dealing with him not only simple but extremely scientific and precise in how you do it, right? And I've gotten trauma removal down to a science. I've gotten limiting belief removal down to a science. But because it's been very rare for me to run into multiple personalities, I have a way of fixing it, but it's not necessarily systematized, if that makes sense. So yeah, I can deal with it, but it's almost like a shot in the dark, and I've just been really successful with my shots in the dark because I know what the heck I'm doing in the mind. But if I can systematize it, I could potentially remove personalities, multiple personalities, as easily as I can remove trauma. And that has massive implications for a lot of things. Because multiple personalities are a very um, kind of sinister topic to kind of like most of psychology. It's like one of the supposed worst things that you could have, right? Maybe schizophrenia and multiple personalities are probably like the height of what I would assume that they would consider a problem, right? But if I can go in and I can systematize it and I can remove them in 5 minutes, then all of that is null and void, right? As long as I get rid of their traumas first and I can reintegrate their personalities, and all of that goes away. And it goes down to understanding that basically there are these archetypes, right? Fight, flight, or freeze. And whatever other aspects of the personality is irrelevant as long as it falls into one of those categories. So, probably talked for a long time. I don't know how long I've been talking here. Yeah, this is already getting to be a long video. So I I have this tendency to just talk very long and passionately about whatever I'm talking about. But to sum all of this video up, right, is that I think multiple personalities is actually a lot simpler than most people make it out to be. And as I fix more, I think it's going to be as simple as anything else to fix. Like it's going to be ridiculously easy, right? It goes from possible to easy, right? Which is I'm at possible, I'm going to get it to easy. And like I said, as I get more data, as I work on more people with multiple personalities, I'll kind of know whether that's true or not, and then I can systematize it. But if I can, then absolutely is going to revolutionize a lot more things than I already have. So stay tuned for more content. Post a comment if there's anything that you specifically want me to make a video about, any topic. At this point, I would say no topic is taboo because I've just totally gone down the rabbit hole, and I'm excited to see how deep the rabbit hole goes. So if there's something you want to hear about, let me know. I'll post it. And then otherwise, just stay tuned on the channel, like and subscribe, and follow me for more. All right, thanks. Bye.